Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Andrews and welcome again to the second edition of ClubZero Celebrity Interviews. Tonight we're going to be interviewing someone very, very special, but first off, the location where we are is the Great Hall in Maine. It's a fantastic location situated here on Little Singleton near Fleetwood in Lancashire. Now I'm joined by my colleagues from ClubZero, obviously Mr. Stephen Plant, who's filming, and Mr. Roy Wilcox, who will be performing the interview with our celebrity guest. But it's not for me to tell you just now who this celebrity guest is, so instead I'd like to introduce you and pass you over to Roy Wilcox.
Hi, and welcome to this magnificent hall. And this evening we will be interviewing famous TV presenter Jason Karl. I will be asking a few questions from members which they've written down for me, and I'll be asking him about his paranormal occurrences, his work on writing books, and his appearances on TV shows such as Nightmare and Spellbound.
So stay tuned, don't be going anywhere, get yourselves a refill, do whatever you need to do, but don't leave that seat. Interview with Mr. Karl coming right up.
I'd like to start by thanking you, Jason, for coming on here and interviewing for ClubZero. I'd also like to thank you for becoming our patron.
Oh, it's great.
Okay. I took a couple of questions from what the members are asking me to ask you. I'd just like to start. During your paranormal career, what would you describe as your strangest encounter or experience?
Well, first of all, saying the word paranormal career is probably not the right way of describing it, because you can't really have a career in the paranormal. You can't make money from being a paranormal investigator. My career actually is in acting, and that's what I trained as. I've worked in television since I was 14 on and off, and the paranormal side has sort of coincided with it when I started with Discovery Channel in 1996, and the two have gradually got melded together since then. The most scary thing that's happened to me was probably at a location that I don't want to name, and it was an old inn in the middle of nowhere. And it was very, very early on when we began the Ghost Research Foundation, which I was one of the original founders when I was 18. Excuse me. And we were in an inn. There was three of us, myself and the other two founders, who were Daniel Holmes and Richard Taylor. I won't tell you the year because then you'll know how old I am. But it was not that long ago. And I was still awake. They were both asleep, lying on top of a bed. The lights were all on like this, in a bedroom, a haunted bedroom, where we've been told all sorts of weird stories, as is always the case. And all of a sudden, I was very bored, I must add. It was about 2 in the morning, I was bored, they were asleep and nothing was going on, just sat there thinking about nothing to do with ghosts. And all of a sudden, this intense fear gripped me. And I can only use that word gripped because it was sudden, intense, and I couldn't explain it. Now, being a person with an objective mind, I'm not a scientist, but having an objective mind and thinking about things in an objective way, my instant reaction was, why do I suddenly feel this intense fear? Nothing's appeared. It hasn't gone cold, there's no smell, the lights haven't gone off, nothing has happened in the environment, so why do I suddenly feel so different? And while I was thinking this, it was increasing, it was getting even more uncomfortable, so much so that I ran across the room and shook Daniel, who was on the bed nearest to where I was sat, and I couldn't wake him up quick enough, and I woke them both up, and they were like, what's going on? Because I was panicking, and I was really screaming, we have to get out, 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 out. Sounds very dramatic, would have been great in a Hammer horror film. But I did get them out. We don't know what it was. I can't explain it other than the way I just have. I'm not saying it's a ghost. I'm not saying it was a malevolent entity that wished me harm. It was an intensely frightening experience, which I still cannot explain. I must add that I've had lots of experiences, but you asked about one that was frightening. Most of my experiences of ghosts haven't been frightening. They've been interesting, sometimes weird, sometimes disconcerting, but not very often very scary, but that was very scary.
Wow, that sounds interesting. What's your favourite location? Would you...
Well, Maine's Hall, of course. Absolutely. No, seriously, what's my favourite location? If you're talking, it depends what the question there really is. Are you asking for a location where there are the most different ghosts? Are you asking for a location where I've experienced the most paranormal things? Are you asking for the most picturesque location, or the one I'd like to live in? You know, there are all different kinds of areas to that question. If you're asking about a location I particularly enjoy visiting, then I would say probably Pengersic Castle, which is in Cornwall, which is a fantastic place to go for all of those reasons that I've just mentioned. But probably above that I would put the Highwayman Inn, which is on the edge of Dartmoor, which is run by a friend of mine and her husband, and it's the most bizarre, magical place you can ever go. It's called the Highwayman Inn, as I said, it's in Sowerton, which is on the edge of Dartmoor. Very haunted, very atmospheric, great food, and quite cheap.
Yeah. This is going to be a question here for you, actually. Have you ever been told that you were not genuine? If so, how did you react?
What do you mean by not genuine? I'm not sure Pachetti.
No, what I'm trying to say on this one is that somebody said, if you've seen on TV,
yes,
and you're very scared or what have you,
yes.
Was that genuine or was that...
Okay, so if you're specifically asking for my performance on television in all sorts of different shows, and yeah. I presume you're alluding to one particular show, but I've done lots of paranormal programmes. Yeah. What you have to remember is that those programmes are entertainment formats, and what you see on television, the same as what you read in a book or in a newspaper or in a magazine, isn't always a complete reflection of the truth. And by that I don't mean that it's a lie, but you don't see the whole thing. So when you see me being scared, what you may not see is that 2 minutes later I've realised why I was scared and it's cancelled it out, but you may not have seen that part, you may only have seen the original reaction. I mean, everybody's human. When something goes bang in the night, you automatically go, oh! But then if you find out what it is, then the fear's taken away, but of course down to an editing situation with a producer, you may not see that part. So, in answer to your question, no, I've never been told that I'm not genuine, but what you see on television is not genuine, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. If you were given the opportunity to do it all over again, would there be anything you would change, and if so, why?
Do what all again?
What you've done in the past.
What, with my whole life? That's a big question.
with your live and paranormal shows that you appeared on.
If I had the chance to do a paranormal show again, would I do it differently? Well, I do paranormal shows regularly. Yeah. They are all different. I'm not in control of them unless I'm producing as well as presenting. No is the answer to that, because they are what they are. I mean, television is a very fickle medium. It shouldn't be taken seriously, in my view. It's an entertainment format. It's great, and I love working in it. And I love film and theatre and all of the other types of media in all of their forms. But no, I wouldn't do things differently, because I don't think you should have any regrets in life. I think it's too short. And at whatever point I leave this life and become one of the ghosts themselves, I don't want to be a person that has regrets. So no is the answer. I wouldn't do anything differently.
Okay, thank you. Did you ever feel that whilst filming the Most Haunted series, occurrences were possibly made by the fact there were so many crew around?
Can you rephrase that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Rephrase it.
Did I feel that the crew made the things up? Is that what you're saying?
No, not so much. That when the occurrences were happening, do you feel that because of the amount of crew that were there,
yes,
the occurrence was happening because of the amount of crew?
No, not at all. Forgetting television for a moment, I'm thinking about other experiences where there have been no television cameras. I've been in experiences where the room has been filled with 30 people. Yeah. In fact, one of the most incredible psychic experiences of my life was in that situation. And there were an enormous amount of people, and then other times things happen when you're on your own. So I don't really think it has a direct relationship to what is happening, but that's a slightly different question to what you asked. It's hard to answer that because, as I've just explained, everything you see isn't quite always as you perceive it on television anyway. So I can't really answer it within the context.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot been said in the papers about what we're referring to, the Most Haunted. About,
I haven't seen any of that.
Have you not? No.
I don't watch Most Haunted. I haven't watched it. I haven't even watched all the episodes I was in, and I certainly haven't watched it since. No. So I can't comment on that.
What are the chances of our members ever seeing you, yourself, participating on a ClubZero investigation?
You'd have to ask my secretary. No, seriously, I don't really do investigations, to be fair. I've just been made a local representative for the Ghost Club Society, which is a very old, distinguished organisation run by some very serious and prevalent people within the paranormal community, people who've been in it for their whole career. I'm talking 40, 50 years. It's great to be involved with loads of new groups, and there are loads of new groups, but they come and go, and most of them are flashes in the pan. Your group I'm very honoured that you asked me to become a patron. I'm delighted to be involved with ghost hunters that are passionate and people who are trying to find the truth, whatever that is. In terms of whether I could join you on an investigation, you'd have to ask me at a later date because I haven't got my diary here.
In your professional opinion, do you feel that today's high-tech investigative equipment has progressed to a level of development it may be possible the equipment could be responsible for creating strange occurrences?
If you're talking about things like electromagnetic field sensors, elaborate digital thermometers, cameras, all of that, you asked me whether I thought that created the phenomenon. No, I don't think it creates the phenomenon because it's all recording equipment. Having said that, I think it's pretty useless. Most of the pieces of equipment that are utilised within ghost hunting were created for something completely different. For example, electromagnetic field monitors were practically unheard of in England until people saw them on television. They were originally created to sense electromagnetic energy, which potentially can be harmful if you exude your body to high levels of it. And in America, people used to have them in the home to check that there wasn't a high level of EMF. It was nothing to do with spirits or ghosts. Equally, digital cameras were not designed to capture ghosts. They were just designed as a better way of capturing images to traditional single-lens reflex cameras. So I don't particularly think that equipment helps. In fact, I think it hinders in most instances. I think people rely on it far too much. It's an unknown result. People say, well, this is an orb, so it must be a ghost. Well, that's nonsense. This is a high level of EMF, so it must be a ghost. Well, that's nonsense as well. And I think it's very easy for people to get carried away with looking at the counter and the camera and the screen and forgetting about the fact that actually all they need is to experience it themselves, and that's the only proof you'll ever get. You won't ever prove it to anybody else because they weren't there.
Yeah. Would you ever feel that that going maybe back to basic on investigation equipment, the techniques would be the ideal?
Absolutely. I mean, in the 5 books that I've written so far, I've said that in 4 of them. I mean, one of the books that I wrote, I did write a lot about equipment because that's what the publisher wanted in that particular section. But I completely agree with that, going back to basics, and I've been quoted and have written many times in articles and in newspapers, etc., that really all you need is a pen and a paper. Because at the end of the day, if you catch something odd on your film, somebody will say, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that. You catch something on your tape recorder or your sound device, they'll say it was faked. You catch something on anything you catch will be questioned, so what's the point? And it really depends what your intention is. If your intention is to prove beyond all doubt that there is something there and ghosts exist, I would say, well, why do you want to prove that? Why does it matter? If you believe it, then that's great, as I do believe it, because I have experienced it, but I have no interest whatsoever in proving it to anybody else.
Okay. Society's view towards the paranormal has advanced dramatically. What would your views be on the back to basic concept of, well, we just answered that question, but what do you feel society's view? Do you think
well, I don't think society has a view on ghost hunting back to basics, to be quite honest, because most of society wouldn't know what the hell you were talking about.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the paranormal community, which is a tiny cross-section of society, a very infinitesimal cross-section of society, as I've already said, I think far too many people rely on setting up equipment, obtaining all the devices so they can call themselves a professional ghost hunter, going into a place where there probably aren't any ghost stories anyway, finding some dust, maybe catching a spider web on a camera, and going out, putting it on a website and saying, look, we found ghosts, aren't we brilliant? Well, forget all of that nonsense. Just go to a place, sit there in the quiet on your own or with your friend or whatever, relax, try not to think about ghosts, don't go looking for ghosts, always go open-minded, and then you might find something. So I absolutely do not agree with any of that. I think it's a load of nonsense. I've done it years and years ago, and I know it doesn't work. It's fruitless. There's a lot of effort, a lot of wasted money and time. The equipment does not find ghosts, so why bother?
How did your friends and family react when you first decided to embark on a paranormal career?
Well, I didn't decide to embark on a paranormal career. I was always interested in ghosts. I had a ghost experience when I was 13 in my grandmother's house, which instigated my fascination, and so my grandmother obviously knew about that already. My family are not spiritualists, they're not religious. That's not a ghost, by the way, there's someone coming down the stairs if you can hear that. But it might be. They're not religious, they don't really have an opinion on it. I don't think my mother or father would ever come on a ghost hunt, but I don't particularly do them myself anymore, but I'm sure they would have much better things to do.
At the grand age of just 14, we're getting close to your age here now, you starred on the Angus television series Nightmare.
Yes.
Did this help you to develop a passion for paranormal investigating and help you guide towards other projects?
Whoever wrote that clearly doesn't know what Nightmare is. No, not at all. Nightmare has nothing to do with paranormal. So why it would ever instigate me to have a fascination with paranormal, I don't know. It's nothing to do with paranormal. It's a children's adventure game. It's like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And But what it did do is, I can answer your question in a different way. It didn't inspire me to have anything to do with the paranormal because it wasn't connected with that. But it did inspire me to have a career in television because being in the studio at 14 for several weeks during the summer holidays, which is when it was filmed, I absolutely fell in love with television as an industry, and it was that made me decide what to study at college, and it was that spurred my career as an actor and in television with all the other things that I've done, both behind the camera and in front of. So it had a massive effect on me, but not a paranormal one.
Do you have any plans in the near future for a new book to be published?
Well, I've just finished another book with Adele, actually, who is here at Mainsville behind the camera. We just finished a book called Preston's Haunted Heritage. That comes out this year. I've also just got two other books coming out this year, two big hardbacks. One's called The Illustrated History of the Haunted World, which is a mass glossary of spirituality and religion all across the world, how it's developed right the way from Egyptian times to now. And it has a lot of ghost things in it, but it also has other aspects of spirituality and philosophy in it. And then another book that I've done is called 21st Century Ghosts, which comes out, I think, at Halloween or around that time this year, 2007. And that's a hardback which details people's encounters with ghosts all around the world since the year 2000. So it's basically proving the fact that although we live in a technologically advanced 21st millennium, we still have ghost experiences, and the testimonies of all the people are in there. So there's two hardbacks, one paperback, and probably another couple of books coming out this year, but I can't tell you about those yet because they haven't been finished.
What would you be your ideal television show consist of, and why?
What, for me to present?
Yeah.
Treasure Hunt with me as Annika Rice.
May I ask you why?
If Chatsworth Television's watching, you know where I am. Why? Because, I don't know why. Because I love adventure games. I think they're a great format for television. I've been involved with several of them. I think they're a fantastic, underused format at the moment. Although there are talks with various producers, so that may change. I don't think Treasure Hunt will come back. Besides, when BBC bought the rights, they absolutely destroyed it. I don't mind saying that on the record. But it would be, in answer to your question, it would be nothing to do with the paranormal at all.
How do you feel the shows Spectre Inspectors and Haunted Homes compare with other aspects of your illustrious career?
Well, Spectre Inspectors was great to do. That was an adventure game show on location, where we had 3 sidekick contestants, and they were running around a house against the clock trying to find the spooks, which was great fun. And a dear friend of mine who I used to work with in theatre many years ago, not many, I've rephrased that, a few years ago, when I was getting my equity card, she was in theatre with me and she played the co-presenter part, and it was great fun. How does it compare to the rest of my career? Probably better than some of the things. So I do a lot of shows that bore me, to be frank. I mean, I do a lot of shopping television, which I love, but it gets a bit repetitive sometimes. But I like working for QVC. Spectre Inspectors was great. Haunted Homes, sadly, wasn't very good. Didn't really come up to what was expected of it. It was fun at the time, except I can remember it was very cold. It was about 3 days before Christmas, and it was absolutely freezing, and there was a gale force wind. I mean, we've had winds at the moment here in January 2007, but there were winds very similar to that when we filmed Haunted Homes, I can remember. So it was very cold, and I was glad when it finished.
And finally, Jason, as a ClubZero patron, what valuable advice would you give to our members?
I would say, first and foremost, and I've already said this in this interview, don't rely on equipment. Don't rely on other people telling you they're a psychic. Because, I mean, every person I meet is a psychic now, and if you'd asked them that 6 years ago, before psychic television was around, they wouldn't even know what the word meant. So don't rely on psychics, unless they are psychics that have been around for a long time and have credibility that can be checked thoroughly. And I mean, you know, not just 1 or 2 people saying, oh yes, they did a tarot reading, it's brilliant. I mean really doing your research. Also, really do your research on the location. Far too many places will jump on the bandwagon and tell you they're haunted just to get you in there with your gadgets so they can get in the paper, when there may not be any ghost stories at all. There are not as many haunted sites as people say there are. There are a lot of people out there jumping on that bandwagon. I would also be very wary of buying too much equipment. You don't need to pay for cameras and all the equipment we've mentioned in this interview. You just need a pen and paper and yourself. And also be very, very careful who you accept into your group, because there are far too many crackpots in this tiny community of the paranormal. I don't mind saying that. I'm a controversial figure, and there are a lot of crackpots. All the waifs and strays of society eventually end up in the paranormal sphere, so steer clear of them. That's what I'd say.
Right, it's been a pleasure, indeed a great honour for us to be given this remarkable interview.
Remarkable.
Remarkable.
Very kind.
We offer you our sincere gratitude to
Thank you
for your valuable time and support.
You're very welcome.
And everybody involved with ClubZero Ghost Group would like to wish you every success in your quest and remain eternally grateful to you.
That's very kind of you, and the same to you, and I hope your club does very well.
Yeah, thank you.